about, I guess, the program development, how the program was designed and what we thought was important. And then Shannon, who obviously is the team leader of the program, is going to talk about what the program looks like, what we ended up with, what a typical program, timetable is, what are the different elements, those sorts of things, and some of the, I guess, the benefits and challenges of that. And then I'll come back to talk a bit about the evaluation, because one of the great things about the Catalyst pilot was that there was, it was independently evaluated. There was quite a substantial amount of money put aside for that. So there was some really great findings. And hopefully there will be some time for questions at the end, so you can ask us some things. So just a little bit, I guess, about... I have a very interesting relationship to Catalyst because when we started doing it, I was in the education and training team, though, of course, I have a clinical background. And I was part of the group that started thinking about what this kind of non-residential alcohol rehab program might look like. And then I had the task of developing up the cognitive behavioural coping skills manual and the groups, which of course I co-facilitated a lot with Shannon, and I actually worked for about 2 days a week for about a year, I think, in the first year of the delivery of the program. And now, of course, I manage it. So, so it's been a really nice. It's nice to still have contact with something that I feel very passionate about, and hopefully you will too at the end of this hour. So it was a Department of Health initiative, and it was, as Matthew said, designed to address a service gap for alcohol-dependent people coming out of withdrawal, where the options for sort of intensive support seem to just be residential rehab, which, usually you have to commit to for 3 to 12 months, which is quite a big chunk of time. So there was definitely a service gap there. It was part of Victoria's Alcohol Action Plan, put to tender in November 2008, and we were given the 3-year pilot, and as I said, it was independently evaluated, and the people who got the evaluation gig were Caranesh. So they worked quite closely with us for the first 3 years in terms of the tools and gathering data. So from the Department of Health's point of view, their objectives were to assist individuals to reduce or cease harmful alcohol use, assist clients to establish healthier lifestyles, and to avoid and better manage relapse. So quite sort of clear, but also quite huge, really. That's quite a lot of outcome from a program. We started out by had the really great good fortune to have Trevor King do our literature review and I guess the kind of guiding program design manual. What the literature says should contribute to the development of effective treatment post-withdrawal for people with alcohol problems. And there's not a huge amount actually of evidence. If you're looking for, evidence-based kind of programs, and you've got to gather evidence for them, and there's not a lot around. Trevor did an amazing job of pulling together a whole lot of stuff, not just kind of the components of effective treatment in terms of content, but also, what seems to work in terms of program design, what are the factors that you need to think about in terms of the staffing profile, all of those sorts of things. So it really helped us start out well. And when we were looking at what we mean by evidence-based practice, this is the kind of definition that we came up with. So clinical decision-making based on the best available efficacy and effectiveness research, expert clinical judgment, and client preferences, values and rights, which we think kind of gets the balance right. Yeah. And certainly clinical judgment, because you get the kind of bare bones and you've got to fill it in. And there's a lot of clinical judgment and practice wisdom that goes into filling in those bare bones. But in terms of what the evidence suggested were the most effective kind of interventions for what we wanted to achieve, the two things that came up were motivational enhancement therapy and cognitive behavioural coping skills training. So cognitive behavioural coping skills training kind of combines a lot of work that's been done on sort of relapse prevention, as well as obviously cognitive behavioural therapy. They sort of come together. And the basic premise is that people have a very narrow repertoire of coping skills, and that sort of kind of fuels lapse and relapse, and what you need to do is broaden that repertoire. Important factors identified by the evidence guide in terms of program effectiveness were flexibility around drinking goals. And we can't really stress this enough. Shannon will talk a little bit more about what that's the challenge of that in terms of delivering a program, but people don't necessarily have to commit to abstinence as a long-term goal. Yeah? They may want to do controlled drinking, they may want to reduce their drinking. The capacity for clients to stay engaged during lapse or relapse, and this is one of the beauties of it being non-residential. This is one of the great strengths of the program. The program has to make ordered sense of the disorder that the clients are experiencing and convey this to the clients. Clinicians also have to convey optimism that the program provides a structured route out of that disorder. Yep. So we can describe, this is kind of what you're experiencing now, but practice these kinds of things and you're going to get these sorts of results. Clinicians have to have the ability to work with complex clients, but also derive satisfaction from doing so. So that's something that they really enjoy. They have to have confidence and pride in the program, and convey positive expectations of treatment outcomes to clients. So this works. If you do these things, that it'll work. Yeah. And post-program aftercare support is also really important, because the evidence kind of shows that it's even with, this program, the 3 months after the program finishes, people are highly vulnerable to lapse and relapse. We also thought, this is the clinical wisdom thing, so there's not really much evidence for it, but I'm sure there is evidence for the importance of it in and of itself, but in terms of combining it with a drug and alcohol rehab program. But we thought that it was incredibly important, just from the experience we had with clients in terms of the kinds of problems they're having, that we needed to add mental health, a mental health component as well, because we knew we were going to get a lot of clients with anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, those sorts of things. And also that strengthening family relationships and social connectedness was also going to be crucial. We wanted to do some work around that. The good things about that is that they also, there's plenty of kind of interventions out there that also utilise a CBT approach, which is consistent with the other stuff we're doing, so it worked quite well. Am I going too fast? Good. Probably had too much coffee this morning. And we also decided that we could, we're quite a reasonably sized organisation, ReGen. We offer a lot of different services, and we had some nice things that we could value add, we could add to the program. Financial counselling, we had a financial counsellor on site. Art therapy, Shannon is actually a qualified art therapist, so that was really lovely. And we also have, people who have expertise in pharmacotherapy for people who are trying to reduce or abstain from alcohol. And also, of course, linkages to all those things that we know contribute to lapse and relapse, so unemployment, also the consequences of drinking. People who've been drinking heavily for quite a long time often have very poor nutrition, they haven't been eating well, and they can be quite physically unwell because of that. So, getting some good food into them and some education on nutrition at the same time seemed important. And also just broadening people's options in terms of recreational activities, introducing them to some new activities that might help them, and it also become important when you think about things like scheduling your day and that sort of thing. And there's the drums in the background. This is a shot of Catalyst Space. As you can see, it's quite colourful and bright and friendly, and clients do enjoy the drumming. We can hear it everywhere else in the building, which is quite good. So some of the implications for wanting to do all of that and all the things that we found out in terms of program design is that it seemed to be, 6 weeks seemed to be the right amount of time in order to fit all of that in and do it justice. You could go for a lot longer, of course, but we didn't want it to be too long. The idea is that it's meeting that gap, that people aren't committing to residential rehab. They want something a bit sort of shorter and easier to get to. That a group size of 15, particularly when you look at the staffing ratio, and we've got to provide one-on-one motivational enhancement therapy as well as the group program, and also all the principles of kind of, good group dynamics and facilitation. 15 seemed like a pretty good number. Also, because we wanted to add the mood management components, so looking at anxiety and depression and anger management as well, we wanted to build in really early into the program a more sort of detailed focus on basic CBT stuff than you'd ordinarily find in a relapse prevention program. Sometimes they talk about kind of negative thinking, that sort of thing. We wanted to get a bit deeper and actually start looking at cognitive distortions and people's thinking and how people could start to challenge that, identify what their thoughts are and start to work on those. And also we had to really think about how we were going to manage lapse and relapse. What were going to be our policies around that, about people coming into the group or coming back to the program, or letting the group know that that's what happened, that sort of thing. So we need to think about that. There's a few quotes from clients from the evaluation report that I've kind of stuck in. So this feels like a real-time exercise. I'm learning new things and putting them into practice straight away, which is definitely one of the benefits. I've never worked in residential rehab, but I've worked in prison drug and alcohol programs, and they do have that problem of being a bit divorced from the real world. So often you're dealing with stuff in a kind of hypothetical. I think therapeutic communities obviously are very different. But yeah, that's one of the beauties, I think, of Catalyst, is that real-time ability to people learn stuff, and then they go home and they come in and do check-in the next morning and talk about what it was like to walk past the bottle shop on the way home. So you get a chance to do that sort of thing. Okay, so it's a bit sort of difficult to understand, but in terms of the development over the 3 years, this is kind of what it looked like. So we started off with this sort of literature review, and it's the program guide, but it's just really saying this is what we want it to kind of contain. And then there's this kind of feedback loop process in the middle there, which is the development of the manual, which involved ENT staff and the clinical staff of the Catalyst program, ENT education and training, we kind of had the job of developing the resources, working very closely with clinical staff, developing the program, and responding to what arose in the delivery of it, and modifying as we went, but also responding to client feedback, because there would be lots of kind of feedback forms throughout that clients would fill in, and also a focus group at the end of each 6-week episode where they would offer detailed feedback on what they thought worked, what didn't work, what was valuable, what wasn't. So there's kind of a really nice kind of process there. And then the evaluation, there were sort of 3 stages, which we'll show in a minute, but then at the end of 3 years there was the final kind of report. So I guess I call this a beautiful collaboration, and it really, really was. It was lovely that the opportunity for education and training staff and clinical staff to work together in the formation of the program materials. So you're bringing together a kind of researchy, theoretical, evidence-based kind of knowledge, as well as that great clinical knowledge, and also the client feedback, and together you end up with, the final product. And it's a luxury. I mean, we don't usually get the funding to do this kind of development. It really was a lovely, lovely time to do it. We had lots of time to do it. And this is what we ended up with. This is kind of, the program in a box. It is a manualised treatment, so the idea is that it stays consistent. That's the thing about, we say there's an evidence base, so we want it to stay consistent to that. And but there's obviously, facilitators have their own style, and but we try and keep the main. So we're all speaking the same language. You get 3 people who do CBT together, and they've all got, some will use ideas from Ellis, and some will use some from Beck, and you get very different language. So we wanted to make that really consistent. So yeah, the evidence guide, there's a participant workbook for the cognitive behavioural coping skills and elective sessions, and then the facilitators' manuals in the background. Oh, why am I going back? Oh, I'm going backwards now. Good, okay. And I'm going to hand you over to Shannon to talk a bit about what the program looks like. Not in a box.
I may be repeating some of what Venetia talks about because it does probably overlap in regards of how we actually, or what a typical program might look like. Now, to start off with, I've got to say that I'm really passionate about this program. I've been with it now for 3 years. Working, and I guess in regards to my own history, I've been working in the field for about 10 years. So to work in this program, you could really see prior to it that there was, I guess, a need for extra options in regards of treatment. And this, it's a privilege. Each time I work in an episode of a client, actually doing shifts and changes from day 1 to the end of week 6. So what we thought we'd start with is just having a look at week 1. So obviously, as you can see, it's quite structured. We've got, I guess, 3 different elements of the program, and part of it is core. So when we start talking about core, we're actually asking the clients to commit to these parts of the program. That's the evidence-based, that's the CB or coping skills, and the motivational enhancement. So they're the ones in red there. The other part of the elective, so it's really up to the clients if they would find value in attending any of these sessions. It's also allowing the client to have choice in their own treatment options. What's important for them? As someone who facilitates a session, we say it's all important because often they don't necessarily know what's going to be presented or the discussion that we have or what they can add or what they might hear during all elements of this program. The majority is group therapeutic based, psychoeducational. The only different part of that would be the motivational enhancement, and there are 4 sessions of those. As you can imagine, that's not a lot of time to be working on a one-on-one basis. So those motivational enhancement sessions are quite structured. We're actually going in there and talking about alcohol a certain way. We're talking about looking at the functionality of alcohol. What role does it play in their life? What are the strategies they can actually incorporate into their life to manage a whole range of situations? One of the comments that we often have from the participants is that this program is not just about alcohol. It's not solely focused on alcohol. We're actually addressing a whole range of different areas of our life that impact their functioning, their quality of life, and relationships. So obviously during those sessions as well, the one-on-one sessions, we are working with where the client's at. Obviously a crisis happens, then it's something that we do deal with, but we're obviously, at the same time, we're really focusing on increasing their motivation over a long-term period there. It is for 6 weeks. We have got the first 3 weeks that are 5 days a week, approximately from, as you can see, 9:15 till around 5 in the afternoon. It does change. Sometimes we start later, sometimes we finish earlier. The clients only need to attend one of those motivational enhancement sessions. You can imagine if we have 4 clinicians and 15 clients, we have 5 sessions a week. So that, again, the participant can actually choose which one of those sessions actually meets their needs. One of the real benefits of the program, and something we've really thought about when we're doing this, is actually making it, or reducing some of the barriers to access the program. So I was talking about the core aspects of the program before, mainly the CBT and also the mood management and the motivational enhancement. A lot of those we've tried consciously to actually start later in the day and finish earlier in the afternoon. So basically, if you do have family requirements, for example, you may have work commitments, whatever it might be, it's about maybe accessing some of those other commitments you have while still addressing the effects of alcohol or alcohol use behaviour. Which way do I press this?
The right-hand side.
The right-hand side. Probably worth mentioning as well, Venetia was talking about the client feedback as part of that evaluation process. The program itself evolved significantly during that client feedback. Initially, for example, mood management wasn't part of that core aspect of the program, the compulsory part of the program. A lot of the feedback was that they actually found that very beneficial. It was quite important that they went to both the anxiety session, the depression session, and the 2 sessions on anger. As we know, a lot of the high-low prevalence disorders are very common when we talk about drug and alcohol use, so obviously a lot of clients found it very beneficial to attending those particular sessions. So with that feedback, we've now incorporated that into the compulsory part of the program. We've also got down here, you might notice, a momentum session. So momentum is our aftercare part of the program for people that have completed the program over the 3 years. This is voluntary. They don't need to attend this. They can come and go as please. I guess one of the only differences between this element of the program and the other is that there is no commitment to abstinence for that period of time that they actually access the program. People have different drinking goals at that stage, and that's okay. I guess we do put in some safety aspects, obviously no glorification. We're really focused on what it means to change and improve in some of those life sort of environments. Oops. Nope. That works as well.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
Okay, so here we've just got that core part of the program that I was talking about. So we've got the 10 coping skill sessions. We've got 2 on CBT. Really, I guess what we're doing here is we're introducing the ABC construct. We're starting to get them to think about, what sort of thoughts are, or what the relationship between their thinking, their feeling, their behaviour might be. And I guess exploring, particularly in that first part and throughout the program, some cognitive interventions that may assist them. We're looking at managing cravings and urges. So we're looking also at high-risk situations, seemingly irrelevant decisions, a number of sessions on communication, problem-solving, goal-setting reviews. So some of the coping skills, social learning theory as well, where we're looking at, I guess, managing what's actually incorporating some of the contributing factors to their problematic alcohol use. And the 4 motivational mood management sessions, anxiety, depression, and anger management, as I mentioned. Now, each one of those has a very strong relationship where we start looking at their cognitive processes. What's happening in regards to their thinking that's incorporating to any of those really distressing factors. We're also looking, I'll tell you those 4 motivational enhancement sessions. Wrong one again.
No, you're going backwards now. I don't know what's going on with this thing.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is some of our elective parts of the program that we've incorporated. So again, each one of these has been thought about in regards to what are some of the interventions that we're developing over the 6 weeks. It's really about building that toolbox that's going to assist them in a whole range of situations. So art therapy, this is really using, I guess it's probably looking just at the process of that therapeutic understanding of what's happening for them at the moment, some of the relationships they might be having, the here, the now, what has been, but using art as the medium in sort of just the verbal. We've got some mindfulness, so within this we're looking at not just mindfulness, but we're using a number of different relaxation strategies. So we're starting to bring into play some visualization, for example, a number of different mindful strategies, including mindful smoking. We have 2 sessions on strengthening relationships. So we actually have a contractor that comes in, a family relationship counsellor, and this is the aspect of the program where our participants invite a significant other to the program as well. And they get to see the environment, we sit down, we have a meal together, so there's a social aspect, but then we also look at what makes a good relationship, what incorporates, I guess, facilitating that. How does alcohol get in the way of that? But some psychoeducation for those significant others are about the process of change, some expectations. Where does relapse fit into that? And more to the point, what can we actually do about it? How do we support those people in our life? Financial counselling, as Venetia was mentioning, where the financial counsellor involved in the program, and I guess the approach they talk about in regards of managing people's finances is really relapse prevention. Often I know when I have particular bills that I've got to pay, or I can't quite keep my budget the way it is, it does produce anxiety. And for a lot of our participants, managing anxiety is often through alcohol use. So it's just about looking at all the implications of financial management just to, I guess, reduce the chance of relapse occurring. Mention mindfulness. Check-ins and check-outs are probably one of our least structured parts of the program. That's about allowing the client to talk about what's really going on in their life. Getting a snapshot of what might be happening for that client today, to let the group members also know what's happening, any successes that they've had overnight, but also any challenges.
And that's where lapse often comes up, isn't it?
It can come up, yeah. So we do really, I guess, suggest if people are finding it very challenging, if they are experiencing strong cravings, if it does result in a lapse, that check-in and check-out is a place where they can openly talk about that experience. We also give them the opportunity to talk about it in one-on-one if they don't feel comfortable sharing that with the group space. Just so we can really reinforce, this is about learning through experience. It's not about punishment, which is often how they can interpret it at times. So this is a place where we can really look at what led up to that lapse. What were the triggers? What were people's experience of it? What did they do well? What could they do next time? What do they need to modify? So really opening it up and sharing that learning in the group process. There is a fine balance of when we actually start recognising that it's, I guess, part of it, and we'll get into that as well, is the commitment to abstinence for the 6 weeks. So actually making sure that this program isn't always for everybody, and particularly if they're experiencing relapse, for example, then we need to probably address that a little bit differently. Education information, so we've got a nutritionist who comes along that really talks about what's good for the brain, what's good for the heart, what's good for recovery, the liver, the kidneys, and providing that psychoeducation, I guess, about simple things about reading packages. What sort of food is good for you? And then going through a process of actually trying a few different recipes in a group process as well. Pharmacotherapy is something that Venetia talked about. It's not something that we insist that people come to the program on pharmacotherapy, but this is just an opportunity where we can actually provide information and allow our participants to have an informed choice about the variety of different pharmacotherapy options that are out there. 2 job network agents. We have 2 because we recognise that participants have different needs when it comes to linkages with employment services. So one of them is JobCo, looking at disability support service, and the other one is CVGT. And the recreational part of our program, so yoga, gym, swimming, deep relaxation, gardening, drumming. I don't think there's one part of our program where we don't actually talk about exercise as an intervention, the benefits of actually keeping healthy and keeping active. But the other parts of the program is really about keeping yourself engaged, maybe giving something a go that you've done in the past that might have gone off the radar, or trying something new. It's really looking at finding those meaningful activities that you have in your life and enjoyable activities as well. And as I mentioned, the aftercare element of Momentum as well. That happens every Wednesday night, and I guess that setup is one where we're using the language of what they're doing during the program, and it's a little bit of a peer support network. We also have a bit of a meal that night, a couple of pizzas, which is always nice, but we also spend a therapeutic time of actually, I guess, looking at skills-based learning, what they have learned in the past and what's coming up for them now. It's a really nice process as well, because we've got participants that have completed the program probably 3 to 2 years ago, and we've got other participants that are just stepping outside of the program now. So it's a very helpful peer network to talk about maybe some of the expectations, what they actually found really helpful leaving the program to contribute that, or continue that journey. I'm going to fall for that again. So this is a quote from Karanich: "The time and resources ReGen allocated to a thorough review of the literature and the commitment to developing of the program based on the evidence has been a key strength of the Catalyst program." So again, looking at what that literature said and putting that in action just to give us a bit of a framework, along with, I guess, that evaluation and feedback that we've had over the 3 years. The program, literally from episode to episode, has been an evaluation for that first 3 years. We're really very conscious about looking at what is working, what do we need to do to modify it and strengthen the program, and also looking at what our limitations might be as well. So some of the criteria, obviously that alcohol is the most problematic substance. So recognising that alcohol is up there in regards to one of the most used and problematic or harmful substances in society, has very few, I guess, programs solely dedicated to addressing alcohol or problematic alcohol use. So although we're saying that it needs to be the most problematic out of the substances it use, it doesn't necessarily have to be the only. It's just that we do monitor alcohol, a lot of conversations about alcohol. If there is any other substance use, polysubstance use, then we request that that actually gets monitored by the actual client themselves. And I guess what we mean by that is if they're coming in intoxicated or substance affected, and we can observe that, then we can feed back to them as well. If we can see it, other people can see it, you're putting them at risk. So if there is any polysubstance use, it's not something that would actually stop them from doing the program, but alcohol needs to be probably the most problematic substance. No significant cognitive impairment. A lot of the work we do, each session that we have is approximately about 2 hours long. We have a lot of information that we're trying to impart during that process. CBT, a lot of it we're looking at people's cognitive processes and gaining a very good understanding of what's happening through that. If people have been experiencing or have experienced cognitive impairment or acquired brain injury, then it can actually be quite distressing. They still might get some benefit out of some of the more psychosocial activities, but it can also, because of the pace that we're working and the resources we have, we don't necessarily have the time to be working that intently on a one-on-one basis.
I think it is a bit of a limitation, given that alcohol does, can cause, long-term alcohol use can cause cognitive impairment. Certainly we've had clients who have a mild ABI. It's when it's more serious that it's a limitation. But I think that's another gap in the system that really needs to be addressed.
And again, one of the real benefits of this program is the exposure that we have with our clients. We're with them for 6 weeks, 5 days a week. And through that process, we start to become aware of, I guess, things like acquired brain injuries that might not have been picked up with a shorter-term engagement process. Likewise with any mental health issues that might be arising. Recently completed alcohol withdrawal. So the program itself is post-withdrawal. It is obviously they need to complete, and that might have a variety of different treatment options there. So it might be residential, it might be outpatient withdrawal, it might be monitored by a GP. Now, we do have participants that report that they've been abstinent for a significant period of time, 3, 6 months, whatever it might be. So in that, we're actually just going on for a bit of a monitoring process the week prior to starting, where we might just ask them to do 3 breathalyzers leading into that. Basically what we're wanting is to make sure that people aren't physically dependent on alcohol at the commencement of the program. Just so, again, they can get the most out of the 6 weeks. Commitment to abstinence for the duration of the program. So as Venetia's saying, we really want to be working with clients where they are with their own drinking goals. But again, we're looking at, and we talk about, the commitment to abstinence is about short-term, I guess, a short-term break from alcohol use. And we talk about that in developing new behaviours as well, neuro pathways that will reinforce with a significant or a short period of time. We do say that it is only a short period of time, it might take a little bit longer, but it's a really nice foundation where people can, I guess, start developing new patterns of behaviour. Over the age of 18, stable mental health, not currently suicidal or psychotic. So we recognise we will be working with people that experiencing different levels of mental health issues. I guess what we do recognise is that if people are finding it extremely difficult to leave the house, to get public transport to and from the program, or suicidal or psychotic, then it's going to be very difficult to engage in the program itself. We have 15 participants maximum, so we just need to be thinking about, you know, are they able to be in that environment? Are they able to get to that environment? Are they going to feel safe in that environment? I guess what we do is at that phase is we actually explore and talk and consult with the client themselves, but also their linkages, so their support services that they might have, to get a better picture if the Catalyst program is suitable for the client right now. And it might not be right now, but it's something that we do work towards. So when there is some stability, that's when we start saying, well, maybe this is an opportune time to access the program. Basic literacy skills in English. Now, they don't need to be Shakespeare, but we do a lot of work on the board, and we do have some client folders, some workbooks that they actually take away. You know, a significant part of cognitive behavioural coping skills is some self-work. I hate using the word homework, but it is. It's really, I guess, looking at themselves and using the skills after hours and putting it into play and developing those skills. And stable accommodation. Obviously, if they're only there till 5 o'clock, then they need to be going home at night. And if they haven't got a roof over their head, then you know, I don't know if it was me, I'd find it very difficult to concentrate about, you know, what's happening in front of me when I'm worrying about where I'll be sleeping that night. So what we've tried to do is, you know, we've tried to reduce a lot of the criteria to access the program. But what we do know with this criteria is we're just really trying to get the client to get the most out of the 6 weeks. It goes very, very quickly. I mentioned before the first 4 weeks, 5 days a week, then it goes down to 4 days a week, then 3 days a week, and then 2 days a week. So although we're talking about a 6-week process, it's probably more to a 22 to 25 day process. Not including public holidays. That throws another spanner in the works. But it does. It happens very quickly. Okay, making external assessment or referral. It should be a referral. A lot of our participants actually do come through ReGen as a service. It is a Victoria catchment, the program itself, but one of the limitations of it is the geographical location. We're set in Coburg, and a lot of our participants live around that area, probably access our service to access our program, and our withdrawal treatment teams are there as well. But we do have, and it's a growing number over the last 3 years, of external services referring to the program, and we've had clients come as far away as Torquay and Frankston. So people are very committed to getting there. So I guess what we're trying to do is to build up our relationships with other treatment services in drug and alcohol and in mental health, in regards to making sure that those people that are really motivated to come to the program, we can get them there. Particularly our relationship with some of the withdrawal units as well. You know, as a post-withdrawal program, we really do like positive relationships and communication to and fro to, I guess, make that stream from one service into another as smooth as possible. So our external referral process, on our website, the ReGen website, we have under the Catalyst program, there will be a referral form and also a little bit of information about that process that needs to occur. So we have the referral form on there. We have what we prefer is an AOD assessment, a release of information with a GP or mental health services, a withdrawal support plan, making sure that's all organised, and inviting them to an information night, which is on a Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. And there we talk about what the program involves, and also giving them as much information about the program so they can make an informed choice. They don't need to be referred to that. They can just come along. So our evaluation. So this was conducted in three 3 stages. The first was looking at program development and implementation. The second was looking at, I guess, the interim report and where we'd gotten to so far in regards of meeting the deliverables. The third was the final evaluation, looking at the 6 and 12 months post-treatment outcomes. We're looking at the strengths, the challenges, and also, so I guess, some of the limitations and recommendations of the program. I'll hand it over to Venetia.
Okay. So I haven't got too many charts and graphs and things, but just some of the interesting ones. I think the evaluation report's available if you want to have a look at it. But so the gender mix was pretty good, I think. So generally 57% men, 43% women. The majority of the clients were only alcohol users, but around 40% also used other drugs. So that's, I think, kind of interesting. And when we look at the outcomes of the program, they also had an impact on substances other than alcohol. So this is I'll get to that later, but this is the proportion of people who used other drugs. So cannabis was obviously very popular. And I think one of the limitations of there's absolutely no reason why Catalyst could not be used for people who use any substance. It doesn't have to be alcohol. It's just that was the funding, and that's what we developed. I don't think there's anything. We have information on the effects of alcohol on the body that is specific to alcohol, but apart from that, I think everything is fairly transferable to any other drug, and to having a mixed group of substance users would be fine. Mental health issues present. I mean, we were right to incorporate it into the program because when we looked at the data, 75% of participants had were being treated or had a diagnosis at some point of a mental health disorder. Mostly the high prevalence disorders, but also there were some people who bipolar, various other mental illnesses as well, some of the more serious ones. So what happened is, in terms of 6-month and 12-month follow-up. So with the final evaluation report, they followed up clients at. They did a whole lot of reporting. Discharge from the program, but also 6 months later and then 12 months after that. And you can see that there were improvements in terms of people's mental health, their subjective experience of their mental health. This is the big one, isn't it? Alcohol use at discharge, but it's not the only indicator, but it's a good one. So this is at the end of the 6-week program. Yeah. Now we know that people are probably at their most. If they've made that 6 weeks, they're probably feeling fairly good at that moment, and the risk of lapse or relapse will probably increase a bit over the next 3-month period. But at the end of the 6 weeks, 21% had achieved abstinence, 34% had reduced their alcohol consumption, 42% they were already abstinent before they came in and they've maintained that, and 3% increased their alcohol use or experienced no change in their alcohol use. So that's a pretty good outcome at 6 weeks. But yeah, it is really important to see what happens post that. So the Caradish evaluation report said that the data gathered through the evaluation demonstrates that the Catalyst program is capable of helping clients to achieve a range of positive outcomes. So not just around alcohol use, including abstinence or reduced alcohol use, but better management of triggers and a reduction of risk behaviours and improved health and well-being, which is, really great. But other outcomes that kind of surprised us, but I think are really important, reported by clients included improved family relationships, social and community re-engagement, and greater quality of life through significant lifestyle changes, which is really nice. We're really pleased that that's the result. The completion rate's also really good. So of the 272 clients in the first year that commenced, 190 completed it, so made it to the 6th week, which equaled a completion rate of around 70%. And if you compare that to other completion rates of other programs, I mean the data they have is from the US, but it's around 23%, and the best is around 46%. So Catalyst is, you know, doing really well in terms of completion. Outcomes. So this is the you know, the most important slide, I guess, the really interesting one. So this is what, over the 3-year period, what happened at discharge, 6 months later and 12 months after that. It must be said that this group here is fairly small, the 12 month. You know, your group gets smaller the further out you go in time, just in terms of chasing people up. But also you probably imagine that the people who are hard to find are probably those who are more likely to have lapsed and relapsed. So, you know, you've got to take that into account, I think, when you're looking at these outcomes. So the first one over here, alcohol, that's got nothing to do with actual alcohol consumption levels. That's to do with how well people think they're going in terms of meeting their goals in terms of alcohol use. Yeah. So close to 100% of people are, you know, think they're doing really well at the completion of the discharge. That drops a little bit in the 6 month period, but then it's almost back up to that in 12 months. So there's kind of, you know, there's a wobbly bit in the middle, but people kind of pick up. It seems to be what it looks like. Other drugs, that's still pretty good. It's not as good. Risk situations, definitely an improvement over time. And then physical health, mental health, and social functioning. These are the kind of lovely ones here at the end. Yeah. So, you know, really nice outcomes. And I guess it showed that the things, the kind of clinical wisdom that we had and the evidence guide, they were all kind of coming together and pointing in the right direction. But we know that, you know, like as Shannon said before, if you've worked in this program, you can feel it. You know, you see people at the end, but it's nice when the evidence backs that up.
It's more that you actually see it.
Yeah.
Like up there we can just see graphs, but we can actually see those improvements over the 6 weeks on people's just ability to enjoy life and I guess not have alcohol impairing what they want to do and reach their goals. And that's really one of the best things about the program.
Yeah.
It's just seeing it over 6 weeks.
But also clients are saying that, I think I've got a list here. Yeah, so at the end of, even on the 12-month follow-up, there was their confidence levels in terms of not drinking with dealing with triggers like unpleasant emotions, physical discomfort, pleasant emotions, testing control, urges and temptations, conflict with others, social pressure to drink, and pleasant time with others has also really improved. So they felt more confident in being able to deal with those sort of situations, which is really nice. We didn't go through all. I didn't think we'd have time to go through all the tools that we used, but there were a barrage of them, and you know, it was a real challenge for clinical staff in that 3 years to have to kind of just the amount of paperwork and tools that, you know, for the evaluation that needed to be filled in by them and by clients was quite extraordinary. So this is just Karanish reflecting that one of the strengths of it is that everyday aspect, that, you know, being able to go home and do it, test out things in real life. And final client quote, I didn't expect to get this much out of it. I've really surprised myself and my family. Yeah, that's it.